This is Think Smart with TMFG, a weekly podcast of what's newsworthy and relevant to everyday Canadians. I'm your host, Senior Financial Advisor Mike Connon of CI Asante Wealth Management. Welcome to Think Smart with TMFG. I'm Mike Connon. This is John Iaconetti, Financial Advisor with CI Asante Wealth Management. So, John, today, I find Canadians carry more debt and face higher expenses than generations in recent history. An example of this, in 1990, households owed less than 90 cents on every dollar of income. Today, it's closer to $1.75. So the cost of living has more than doubled, meaning many Canadians are under financial pressures they didn't face before.
And we have to come to conclude that preparing today's episode, that the pressure is changing behavior. As money gets tighter, Canadians are increasingly comparing themselves to their peers, maybe their coworkers, and really what they see online for what they feel like they should be doing to keep up. But that comparison fuels stress, it can erode your confidence, and can lead to some financial decisions that undermine long-term stability. So, with this in mind, today we'll look at how rising living costs are driving comparison and the practical steps Canadians can take to regain control without letting pressure or perception dictate their financial choices.
So let's start, John, with a few observations.
Yeah.
So in 1990s, households had a debt-to-income ratio of 86%.
Yeah.
You know what that is today?
I believe it's about 175%.
That's quite the change, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I know interest rates were a bit higher then, and they're a little bit lower now.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's a tremendous amount of difference in there. And I guess a lot of it is fueled by high housing prices.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Cost of living, even going back to the 1990s, $100 buys about $206 worth today.
And when you find the debt has outpaced inflation, there's definitely a problem. And as you said, interest rates lower than 1990, but principal debt increases financial vulnerability along the way. Implications are higher debt, higher costs equals less flexibility. Comparison-driven decisions are more likely to produce mistakes.
Exactly. And now that we're in this position where comparison is becoming a pretty big part of, I feel like, society, why do you think comparisons matter more today for Canadians than maybe in the past?
I guess when you look at things, when I go to comparisons, people want this idea of keeping up with the Joneses. And I always tell people my first car was a 1977 Toyota that was beaten up and cost me $500 to buy. You don't see that nowadays.
No.
People are out going and they go to the dealerships, the parents bring them out and they get them started on a lease. And this is the start of problems when you start to get into things you can't afford. I always remember when I started in the financial business, and as usual, I was a young guy who didn't have any money and we didn't get paid much money. And I remember I was feeling really good one day and I went out with my girlfriend and I went shopping for a suit. Because I used to go to Moore's to buy my suits for what it was, $100 or it was $80 to $100 for a suit. And I went downtown to this, it was on Bloor Street. It's probably still there. It's called Stollery's. And it was a nice store. And I went down to the bottom and they had this beautiful suit. And it was my size and it was double-breasted suit, just to age on how far back. Last time someone wore a double-breasted suit. And I remember looking at the price on it and I think it was $500 or $600. And I didn't have $500 or $600. And I put it on and I was just dreaming of this. And my girlfriend went at the time, she said, "You should buy that. You look really good in it." And through trying to keep up in that, I went and bought that suit. I put it on my Visa card. So I didn't have $500, but I put it on my Visa card. And I remember that was the start of debt for me.
Yeah.
And it was funny because it literally took me 8 years to get out of debt because I got the Visa bill that at the end of the month. I didn't have the money to pay it. I had the suit, but I didn't have the money to pay the Visa bill. And along the way, once you've crossed that barrier that says, okay, I'm willing to go and carry debt, it becomes an ongoing thing. And I remember I was always working and trying to get down and pay off my credit card. Then finally, I just decided that's it. I'm going to put everything down and be debt-free. And other than a mortgage, I've spent my life being debt-free from that point on. And it was a tremendous freedom that went on in life by doing that. But I find right now that was a situation I went through. I did it for $500. People were doing it for much bigger amounts now.
Oh, yeah. And you had a great example there of a slippery slope that getting into debt is. And really the big thing too is you mentioned keeping up with the Joneses, but now with social media, the Joneses used to be the people down the street. Now the Joneses are people all around the world that you could just scroll on your phone and see other things people have that you might want.
Yeah, we hear this with the problem with, I'm not even going to say young people, because young people is now into their 30s.
Yeah.
Instagram, everyone posts the best version of themselves on Instagram. And everyone feels bad about themselves. As you see these, whenever someone goes, I went away with my daughter, and as soon as you get to a beach, they're taking 100 pictures. They're not taking pictures of them doing homework. It's not going to thing. It's when they're on a beach and everyone thinks, God, they have a great life. I have to keep up with that. So I want to make sure my vacation is as good as their vacation, because they're assuming that hour of their life is their entire life, and they want to keep up with that. So society has really leaned to that. And that's continued to become an ongoing problem with people willing to take on debt in order to achieve this, let's say, false lifestyle.
We start to see this pattern now blend into our clients. You start to notice the people that do end up comparing themselves tend to be the overspenders. Maybe they're spending beyond what their lifestyle allows them to. They might be chasing certain career titles just for the sake of the title, looking for something that, maybe is not for them in their own best interest, but maybe it's just something that to have a title to call their own. And really the ones that do that really delay long-term financial planning. They're only thinking in the short term. They're thinking about what they're going to buy tomorrow or next month, and not necessarily what could be in retirement and down the road.
The career paths are a tricky thing. You have to look in the future. I don't believe in people thinking of short term, because too many people get caught in the short term.
Absolutely.
Look. But again, as you said, some people get caught in titles rather than future. And it just wants to be a position that gets other people are thrilled when they hear you're the vice president of whatever it is. There's vice presidents of everything in every company now. And they don't seem to have the same latitude as they used to have. And I got to say, that's the fault of the financial industry, because a while ago, they would go and give every financial advisor a title of vice president in the banks and the financial institutions. And they really wouldn't be anything to do with a vice president. It was just titles to make them seem good to clients. And again, that's continued to happen.
When we do our client information update forms, there's quite a few vice presidents nowadays. That's a little too many. I know you touched on it as well, that with delaying this financial planning, it is affecting, in my opinion, one of the most vulnerable groups. And you touched on it as well, in regards to those who are dealing with keeping up with the Joneses and the social media era. It's those that are 30, 40, 50 years old now that maybe aren't too young where they can still continue to take the risks and spend the money and have time. But now they should be starting to think more about long-term planning.
The problem happens a lot too. And this is one of these things we do see is people don't want to have kids early because they don't want to sacrifice. If you want to live a great life and you want to do that to your 20s and your mid-30s, all of a sudden when they get to their mid-30s, they say, yeah, maybe I should start to have a family now. And sometimes it's not the easiest thing to start at that stage. It should be started earlier. And we find that's been a problem because, again, financially, everyone else, all your friends, if you're in a group that's 30 years old, everyone's traveling the world, everyone's doing all this stuff. You want to keep up with that. And again, it's delayed families starting too. And that can sometimes present a problem.
And with measuring this impact, I guess that if people are to delay, right now, it just puts you behind the eight ball. Right now, we know that compound growth within the portfolio, the more time you have to have your money invested in long-term in RSPs, TFSAs, and things like that, is going to mean more for you down the road. And you don't want to be caught, to your point, a little bit too late in life and then starting to having to think about what is going to be coming for the long term.
I've read a lot about the relationship of wealth and happiness, and there's a lot of studies done on this, and they're always very interesting. And the one thing that's true is a lot of wealth does not buy any happiness, right? But the one thing that everyone forgets they say money can't buy happiness, and that's a nice term, right? The one thing that they forget to do is not having any money buys misery, which is another point. Because so at a certain point, once you get above, let's say, the medium class of average income, you don't get any happier after that. But that poverty stage from there into you get to medium income, it is highly related to happiness. And when people struggle financially, struggle to pay their bills, struggle to pay their mortgage, it adds tremendous stress on the whole family unit and tremendous stress on the people.
Absolutely. With that and what we know, maybe you're listening to this podcast now and feel like you might be falling into that strategy. So what are some things you could do just to regain control over your own finances?
It's funny. The one thing I know is we meet with a lot of potential clients that come into our office. Mm-hmm. And within a few minutes, you can usually tell if they're going to be a good client or not a good client.
Yeah.
Some key things, anyone who has a budget will never have a problem in their life. It's guaranteed. And it's just from my experience, any client that walks in and can put down a budget and say, I put my expenses in the Quicken and here's what I spend a month, I know there's zero financial problems in their life. Mm-hmm. And that's just the case because they're aware of their expenses. Other people who are very unaware, massive problems. They don't know what they spend. They don't do their savings as an afterthought, and they live on whatever comes in. and they're not really worried about the future. That indicates there's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. They're understanding your situation is going to be the first step to bettering your life. And to your point, it's usually the people with the budget that are asking, how do I compare and how do I stack up to others? To your point, you have a budget, you're already probably better than 90% of Canadians out there. Because not a lot of people know what they spend on a regular basis.
And the comparison, that's always another question.
Yeah.
How do I compare? And it's a very difficult thing to answer because there's such a different depth of clients we've seen. I had a great client years ago, and he raised an entire family and everything, and he worked for a company. He never made more than $50,000, $60,000 a year, and he was a sole bread earner in the family. Put his kids through university, did everything. I remember having a conversation with him once, and I said, how do you do this? He said, Mike, I don't drive new cars. He says, look at my car. And he says, I just put all my money toward my mortgage. I get that paid off. And he was this great saver, great family man that created this great family through spending very little money and always had his RSPs maximized, always did savings, always did everything the right way. And I see other people that make silly amounts of money and beyond what you'd ever think people can make, and disappears.
Yeah.
And it's just when you don't track things, it's very easy to go through a lot of money.
It all does go back to what you spend. What you spend at the end of the day is going to help dictate whether your financial plan could be successful. And that's even our role as advisors to try to help people see through that, try to look beyond the rose-colored glasses of keeping up with the Joneses and spending your money today and not thinking about tomorrow. There has to be some degree of balance between the two. As long as you're saving for tomorrow, we kind of use that rough estimate of 20% of your gross income. You save that, you can spend the other 80% pretty well guilt-free.
People sometimes have to realize their financial advisor is not supposed to be their friend.
Yeah.
I like my clients and I do love my clients, love talking to them, but our job as financial advisor is not to be someone's friend. It's to make sure along the line, to make sure their family's they're taken care of and their family's taken care of in the future. And our job, which is probably the most difficult part of the job, sometimes it takes some hard love to go and keep people on that right track. And to go on the right track, sometimes you can't have things you want.
Yeah.
And everyone wants, when we're a baby, we see something we want. But if you're going to take care of the future, you somehow have to sacrifice some things that you want right now. So let's quickly recap what we remember when we are letting those comparisons drive your financial decisions. First, remember that Canadians operate now in a financially more constrained environment than 30 years ago. Higher debt, higher costs, visible income gaps make comparison more impactful. Comparison isn't just emotional, it can lead to measurable financial consequences and increased stress, as people try to overcompensate or match the status they haven't yet reached in pursuit of acceptance. The solution? Know your situation, make a budget, and data-informed decision-making to protect financial confidence. Pace yourself and keep your finances realistic with your growth, not anyone else.
And if you're wondering whether comparison is creeping into your money, investments, or even career decisions, or you simply need that extra help making choices based more on logic than emotion, check the show notes and book a conversation with us. We can help you get clear on the numbers, build a solid plan, and make your money work for you, not the other way around.
Thank you very much for joining us on another episode of Think Smart with TMFG. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Think Smart podcast. I'm Mike Connon with the McClellan Financial Group of CI Asante Wealth Management. Don't forget to subscribe to Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, and leave us a review. For more insights and resources, visit tmfg.ca or follow the link in the episode description.